Chapter 91.1. Piracy has traditionally been a lucrative business, but it also required choosing the right time and place. In the Aegean Sea, teeming with city-states, attempting piracy would invite the fleets hired by these city-states to attack your town. Next, you'd end up hung at the gallows, known as a rogue knight. How do you see me? Ah. Sorry. That wasn't my intention. Of course, when engaging in piracy, it's about joining hands with the right opponent. Surely, there must be a city wanting to plunder the fiefdoms of the emperor. Sinurna was honestly impressed. When piracy was mentioned, it wasn't just about profit or risk, but rather finding forces to connect and move in such a manner. This knight possessed the innate instinct of a born plunderer. Rogue acts required not just bravery but also restraint to last long. War has always been profitable if you win. There's no shortage of enemies around. Sinurna was well aware of the local situation. It was different from the western fiefdoms of the empire. Nearby, various noble families of the empire were intricately entangled, making it difficult for knights like Johann to start wars on their own. But here, the situation was much freer from a moral standpoint. With the protection of the Bredoux family, it was feasible to confront other local powers. Johann was not lacking in confidence for battle either. But for the sake of the Duke's dignity, shouldn't there be some preparation? I've already finished talking with the mercenaries I brought. They agreed to follow. Suetug nodded, unsurprised. Johann's control was remarkable. His natural bravery and generous rewards had earned him the mercenaries' absolute loyalty. I also plan to mobilize tribal warriors if possible. The eastern tribes? Is there a problem? Won't they refuse? Sinurna asked incredulously. It wasn't a matter of conditions. The barbarian tribes outside the east had a different mindset from the people of the empire. While mercenaries within the empire would rush anywhere for gold, the eastern tribes preferred to directly seize gold. Only someone of the Duke's stature could rule them through authority. They agreed to come. They liked the idea of sharing the spoils. Leaving the confused Sinurna behind, Johann discussed detailed plans with Suetug. They planned to gather as many soldiers as possible and, once the weather cleared, join the Duke's army and head for Umdim. People from the Jarpen family, as if it was their own matter, happily offered advice and suggestions. Despite being sent by the Count, Johann had quickly gained the Duke's favor, surpassing many other knights. They couldn't help but feel proud. But Suetugnim, are you sure you can join us? I heard you're in demand elsewhere. Most of those inquiries can wait for a response. Nobles always want to know the future, even though they don't know if it's accurate. Sinurna nodded in agreement with Suetug's words. Interpreting prophesied like you might be most beneficial. Anyway, I plan to join. Attacking a city will be a big fight, and you'll need help. Johann expressed his gratitude. Only with friendship could one refuse such calls and join the army, no matter where a remarkable wizard was summoned. However, Sinurna's participation was unexpected. Johann thought she would stay in the city. In the plains, bad luck led to 3 life-threatening incidents, but in the city, there was no reason for that. There were no nobles wanting to kill her, even for the emperor. That's obviously because the reason is lame. Do you think there are no emperor's people in this city? Sinurna asked as if she was dumbfounded. She was currently accompanying them on the pretext of being captured as a prisoner. If she acted too freely, she would arouse suspicion. Johann looked at Sinurna with a new look in his eyes when he heard that. It's not a question for me to ask, but what are you going to do with the aftermath later? Is the emperor such a lenient person? No. He's a strange and belligerent person. And I can handle the aftermath myself, so don't worry. No matter what excuse she made, she would be unable to avoid the suspicious eyes. But she was so calm. Without certain confidence in the emperor's trust, this would not have been possible. I see. Then, can I count on your help during the siege? Of course. Sinurna spoke, shaking her pipe. It was an event she would rather welcome. Johann's and the wizard's mindsets differed. As Suetug said, a life's debt was not light for a wizard. If there's a mental burden, one can be free, and if not free, magic is restricted. Self-deception was impossible. Moreover, Johann's connection with Sinurna seemed quite peculiar to her. Leaving after 3 oaths and being saved 3 times seemed almost prophetic. In a siege, she would have many opportunities to shine. After significant contributions, the mental debt might fade. The 3 oaths would be considered later, but for now, the mental debt needed addressing. Suitg is a great philosopher, but his magic is not destructive. Sometimes evil is necessary in war. Must be nice being evil. Although Suitg sneered, he did not deny Sinurna's words. If it was about ruthless tactics, she was a step ahead. After all, the suspicious mysteries that occurred in the Emperor's court were all probably related to her. Wait. Can you also summon trolls? I deal with the flames of prophecy, not trolls. Perhaps you should have asked the savage of the Black Forest? Sinurna seemed surprisingly ignorant about it. Johann asked if there were other wizards under the Emperor. Sinurna nodded as if it were obvious. Every day, dozens claiming to be wizards come. Most are fake, but 1 or 2 remain. There are always bold ones. Suitg said with a smirk. Being exposed as a fake wizard led to cruel punishment. Comfortable death was out of the question. It was a grave crime to deceive nobles for preferential treatment. But why are you asking me that? Do you know any wizards? No. Just curious. Chapter 91.2. In this era, there was no army that prepared and marched out in complete secrecy. Rumors inevitably spread while gathering, during preparations, and at the time of departure. It was a matter that took all this into account. After all, the opponent also had to rely on rumors to make accurate judgments. When the army gathered in Bayern and a campsite was established near the city, the surroundings began to stir. Winter was about to end, but where exactly were they to march? Count Ganelwood, it is an honor to meet you. Why you are Sir Johann? I have heard much about you. Johann was surprised but maintained his expression. Only novice knights show their emotions. He learned to keep a straight face and think inwardly since his time in the fiefdom. Count Ganelwood, constantly wiping sweat with a handkerchief, appeared timid with his thin and small stature, the dark circles under his eyes making him look more like a scribe. Expecting a boisterous noble or a military-like figure to lead the Duke's army. Is there something I should keep in mind? No. There isn't. You lead the army you brought with bravery. The armies of this era were not well-organized units but rather collections of various followers brought by individuals. Even as a commander-in-chief, issuing absolute commands wasn't possible, and the nobles who brought their soldiers had the autonomy to act independently. Customarily, at such a gathering, one would at least say, "Understood. I will strive to fight honorably. Yes. You may go." After seeing off Johann, Count Ganelwood re-entered his tent, his hands and face sweaty. How was it? Indeed. Very impressive. Inside the tent, an old knight was polishing his sword. He was Sir Karpati, known as the Lion of the East. A loyal retainer of the Duke, he was in the city for the punitive expedition. Seeing your words, Lord, he must be a remarkable knight indeed. Not as much as you, but still a formidable knight. Ganelwood sat down with a groan, weakened by the cold wind. Most knights usually couldn't hide their disappointment when they saw Count Ganelwood, due to his unimposing presence as both a noble and a knight. However, Johann showed no flicker of emotion in his eyes or expression. Whether genuine or not, this was a remarkable composure for someone his age. Moreover, he brought many soldiers, including Eastern barbarians. Those warriors too? Reminds me of my youth, but he surpasses my younger self. Lord. You were always great. I am nothing compared to your lordship. As mentioned, Count Ganelwood wasn't popular. Yet, he had managed the county and received the Duke's favor, despite such drawbacks. Unseen wisdom. That was Countess' true weapon. Knowing this, Sir Karpati was always careful around Count Ganelwood. It was not just about status but also genuine respect. Has His Grace, the Duke, promised you the city of Umdim? No way, that's absurd. The Count waved his hand dismissively. Umdim was not a city to be handed over to others. Its well-developed city's income was immense. One of the stars of Bredoux will receive it. My God. Still? Lord Karpati sighed in disbelief. Both he and the Count knew it. Duke Bredoux was an impeccable ruler, but the succession issue was not. Instead of simply passing it to the eldest, he incited competition among his children to choose the most outstanding successor. Despite warnings from his advisors about the dangers and potential internal conflicts, the Duke's stubbornness remained unchanged. That's something pagans would do. And now, you try to convince him. If he was going to listen, he would have done so before. The practice of children competing for succession was common in the pagan empires across the sea. Lord Karpati was uncomfortable with the Duke adopting such customs. Then, Your Excellency will be overseeing one of the stars. You too. Yes. Just command me. The Duke's children were still inexperienced, but Count Ganelwood and Sir Karpati could sufficiently support them. The Duke had likely summoned them for this purpose. Isn't he a weak and fearful stutterer? Watch your words. A cladder shrugged and pulled the bowstring. While waiting for spring, Johann and the warriors kept going out for hunting expeditions. Johann could have stayed idle, but the tribal warriors constantly nagged to go outside. He was grateful for the acceptance of his suggestion, but these warriors could be annoyingly demanding at times. I too was puzzled. But I think there must be a reason why such a weak and fearful stutterer has been favored by the Duke for so long. Perhaps he comforted the Duke with his body after his grace lost his wife? Listen seriously. A cladder. I am being serious. Johann was shocked at a cladder's expression. To think that was his idea of being serious. Ultimately, dealing with the Count will be my responsibility, but I still want to warn you to be careful. Don't worry. You'd be surprised how polite I can be when dealing with the nobles of the Empire. The group, returning to the encampment near the city, squinted at the distant flag. It was the banner of the Bridoux family. It couldn't be the Duke himself leisurely here. Johann dismounted and greeted respectfully. The Duke's youngest looked at him intently with clear eyes. Chapter 92.1. Hello, Repiata Gong. Thank you for your answer last time. Under the sun, rather than a dark corridor, it felt all the more peculiar. The youngest of the Bridoux family seemed almost like a half-dead person. The voice was cold and dry, and it had a different vitality from the other brothers and sisters of the family. It was like that of a half-dead person. The escort knight next to him asked Johann. We have prepared some drinks as a token of our appreciation. Would you like to join us? I gratefully accept. While speaking, Johann realized that a cladder had run off in the distance, chatting with Gerdulf, Marco, and Stephen. To the centaurs who revered the stars of Bridoux were a source of constant dread, and for the youngest of them, this fear was even more pronounced. So is that why she ran away like that? If she was the kind of person who would talk to knights he didn't even get along with, then she must have been really scared. After all, it seemed that this young Bridoux didn't care much either. There was no need to call others when it was just about showing gratitude to Johann. And soon, Johann would come to regret this decision. Repiata's camp was unusual. Normally, a noble's fiefdom is organized around the tent of the highest-ranking person. Knights and lower nobles stay inside, while those of lower status are on the outside. Of course, only those of a certain rank should be seen inside. But what kind of arrangement is this? There were knights and lower nobles, but there were too many suspicious-looking characters. It was fine to have wandering alchemists or minstrels. But there were people who looked like thieves or swindlers rolling around. They sat in the corners of the camp with gloomy expressions. The highlight was an orc moneylender. The knights frowned upon seeing an orc dressed more lavishly than the nobles, jingling a pouch of gold coins. Please do not misunderstand them. Misunderstand? I don't understand what you mean. Brynhild, the knight who brought Johann to Repiata, showed a faint satisfaction on her face. She was pleased with Johann's tact. Sir, I hope you won't be surprised or startled when you meet Gong inside. Johann suddenly felt uneasy. What's inside the tent? A trap? Of course not. The inside of the tent was bleak with no decorations. Johann felt an inexplicable chill. It wasn't because of the weather. As he sat down, a servant poured wine into a silver cup. Johann accepted it politely. Thank you. The silence inside the tent was heavy. The Duke's youngest was not sociable. The knights beside him were taciturn, and the servants even more so. Hence, the silence. Johann regretted not bringing a cladder. He had come with a light heart, not expecting such a silent company. Johann wasn't talkative, but he had to initiate conversation here. You are staying out here like this because are you participating in this expedition? A nod. An affirmation. Are other family members participating too? A shake of the head. A negation. Do you know Count Ganelwood? A nod. An affirmation. Are you moving together? A shake of the head. A negation. Any other knight might have felt insulted. But Johann read the expressions of those around him. They were also nervous about Repiata's silence. If it wasn't intentional, it was fine. Besides, Johann was someone who could sit through insults if it meant gaining an advantage. Johann decided to pass the time without conversation. There was a Go board at the back of the tent. Would you like to play a game? Repiata nodded. Pleased, Johann picked up the Go stones. Johann hadn't considered Repiata's skill to be strong, given his young age and the closed nature of this world where information was not shared. Here, knowledge was hoarded, not shared. However, the result was surprising. Repiata played Go with a calm and deep strategy, seemingly a step or two above Suetlg. I lost. When Repiata conceded defeat and resigned, the waiting knights were even more surprised. It was Repiata who had defeated all the knights under the Duke. Johann knew he was a brave knight, but he didn't expect him to be so strong on the board. Would you like to review the game? Repiata nodded again. Johann sighed in relief. It seemed they could pass the time without speaking. After completing the review, Johann stepped outside to find the sun setting. He suddenly thought. A knight, also a member of the aristocratic class. One couldn't always just wield a sword. Such social activities were essential. If there are only taciturn people around, it's unbearably painful. I fully realized that today. Thank you for accepting the invitation today. Gong must have been pleased to build rapport and connections. Johann harbored doubts internally. It didn't seem like they had built any rapport. But from Brynhild's perspective, today's conversation was quite talkative. Compared to others, it was the epitome of closeness. Indeed, perhaps because their interests aligned, they could communicate so well. Though he was told to build rapport in advance for the expedition, he had not expected such extensive conversation. She bid farewell to Johann with a satisfied expression. May I ask you one thing? Please ask, Sir Johann. I notice many peculiar people. Are they your Gong's people? Yes, they are loyal people serving Gong. Chapter 92.2. Johann regretted not just keeping silent. It was because Repiata started inviting Johann to his tent every 2 or 3 days. Being the child of a duke, he couldn't refuse, and every time he went there, he felt suffocated and exhausted. Upon hearing the situation, Aclada was so delighted that he almost died. Didn't I say it was ominous, Sir Knight? Hes just a man of few words, that's all. After the last incident, Aclada had become quite friendly with Gerdulf and Marco. It seemed Gerdulf's taciturnity and Marco's archery skills were quite appealing. Playing against the Duke would have been better. Surely there would be something to gain. But if it's the youngest child of the Duke, the story changes. First, it's uncertain whether Hes the favorite of the Duke, and what will happen later is also unpredictable. How was the person? The people around him were quite loyal. At that age, it's quite an impressive level. And there were some strange characters around. Johann told Suetlg about the various people around him. Suetlg listened as if it was fascinating. That's certainly interesting. Even with all the talent, to have such people around. Wait. Now that I think about it, aren't you the same? I only dealt with people whose identities were certain. Repiata must have checked the identities too. I missed asking, why are you bringing the Eastern Ranger? Ah. That guy. After hunting the werewolf, the rest were forgiven by the Duke and released, but Galambo's was not. Johann had a lot of questions. An ordinary knight might not have shown much interest in a hunter's knowledge, but Johann had been asking Joseph various things since he was young. He didn't miss the opportunity to review what he had learned before and to gain new knowledge. Johann made full use of his status and position as a knight. Wouldn't he be useful in a siege? Well, I'm not sure. Anyway, isn't that kind of thinking similar? I think him a bit better. Honestly, there doesn't seem to be much difference on the surface. Count Ganelwood issued the departure order a week earlier than planned. The mercenaries, who had been waiting leisurely, grumbled as they packed their bags. Count? Isn't the Count great? Hes doing this so they can prepare after hearing rumors from the city side. That's one way to think about it. I thought it was the Duke rushing him. Sinerna looked surprised, as if she hadn't thought of that. She hadn't rated Count Ganelwood that highly. She had thought the change in schedule was a minor mistake. A mistake that a timid count might make. Soldiers moved in groups, following their flags. It was impossible for all the soldiers gathered here to depart at once in an orderly manner. They were not organized that way from the beginning. The commanders of each unit shared their destination and went there on their own, a method akin to a primitive approach. Johann also led his unit towards Umdim. He saw some knights he had met in the city leading mercenaries as they passed by. "Sir Knight! There's a town ahead. Will you attack it?" "No. Call the village chief." Aklada ran off again with a look of regret. He wished to break into the town's palisade and loot property at will. Johann sternly reprimanded the village chief who had paid taxes to the city instead of the duke. The village chief, trembling, paid protection money with the town's collected wealth and pleaded for mercy. "I don't understand why you're lenient toward such weak traitors." Sir Knight must have too. Euclia's words began to reach him faintly. The beginning probably sounded like, "Did I say something wrong?" Such people won't be grateful even if shown mercy. If Sir Knight had fewer soldiers, they would have spat and insulted, and if Sir Knight had retreated in defeat, they would have betrayed and attacked. Well, probably. Aklada was puzzled when Johann readily agreed. He didn't expect him to concur there. It's not out of honor or pity for them, but for practical reasons. If we loot one town, others won't come out easily, choosing to resist desperately. Our goal is Umdim, and there's no reason to weaken ourselves before reaching it. Although we'll get less gold. Aklada, impressed by Johann's words, readily agreed. "You're right. I hadn't thought of it that way. Since we'll be in this area for a while, it's better to make as few enemies as possible." However, not all knights and mercenaries thought as coldly as Johann. Basic supply in this era was terrible. It was rare for supply units to constantly go back and forth between the front and rear, and usually they had to be self-sufficient locally. And the most convenient form of self-sufficiency was, of course, plundering. There was sufficient justification, and the mercenaries also cheered for such looting. It was an opportunity for a lucrative income, not just supplies. Knights like Johann, who thoroughly stacked up supplies during the preparation period and additionally replenished from towns and merchants, were a rarity. When about to extract money and supplies from another town, a mercenary came running from afar, holding a flag of an unfamiliar mercenary group. "Sir Knight! Good news! Our captain has sent a message to attack this town together." "No. This town has already received protection money. I swore in my name not to attack it." "No. Were you, the knight, the one going around doing that sort of thing?" The mercenary looked astonished. Hearing rumors that some towns avoided plunder by invoking the name of the knight, the thought. Accompanied by the sound of a whip, the mercenary was thrown off his horse. Gerdolf and Aklada struck the mercenary simultaneously. The two exchanged satisfied glances. This worthless human. How dare he be so insolent? I have committed a crime worthy of death. I am sorry." The fallen mercenary spat out blood and quickly bowed his head. Chapter 93.1. The mercenary had lost his nerve and made a ridiculous mistake. He had made a blunder in front of a knight. Mercenaries were not always subservient to knights. If it had been a few dozen mercenaries, the mercenary's envoy could have been arrogant in front of the knight. However, the problem was that there were hundreds of soldiers behind the knight. As the fierce barbarians from the east stared at him with shining eyes and tapped their scabbards, the mercenary felt a chill run down his spine and could not raise his head. "That's enough. I'll overlook your blunder. Go back and tell them." "Yes, thank you." The mercenary hurriedly mounted his horse and fled. Johann paid attention to the fact that the mercenary had a horse and was also quite well armed. "Which mercenary company is it?" "The Willigo Mercenary Group, sir." Marco answered. The Willigo Mercenary Group was a fairly large mercenary company whose leader had also been granted a knight's title. Since they had participated in the Duke's subjugation, their skills were guaranteed. "It won't be over 1,000, will it?" They would have received a recruiting permit, so if they had recruited as many people as possible before the subjugation, they could have increased their numbers that much. "Are you worried about a clash?" The whip was not a friendly greeting. The other side would not dare to start a fight unless they were crazy. "Sir Marco, I haven't lived that long, but one thing I've learned is that the world is full of crazy people." Johann's words made Aklada burst out laughing. "Increase your vigilance." You Clyer. I would like you to take care of the rear. I don't understand this one. What does it mean? You are giving an order, not a request. I see. I made a mistake. Take care of the rear. Tell the others to increase their vigilance as well. It wouldn't be strange to run into the enemy soon. So, Captain, the knight and the barbarians were. Shut up and go back to your tent. Mercenary leader, Red Axe Gulik said, pulling out a stiff beard hair. It's getting annoying to meet a strange night dastard. Isn't he a funny guy? If you're going to say that kind of thing, you should go to a monastery. What is he, a priest? Captain. The night dastard is acting arrogantly. Why are you listening to him? Ignore him. Captain also has a knight title, right? That's right. Let's ignore the night dastard and go to town. Ha ha. Kid. Gulik looked at the mercenary who had returned after being whipped, as if he was proud of him. When the mercenary looked at him with an expectant gaze, Gulik punched him in the jaw. Gak! Who's being arrogant right now? Who? To show his position among the rough mercenaries, violence and threats were necessary. Gulik, who had caught the opportunity, beat the mercenary roughly. After beating the mercenary so much that he could not support his limbs, Gulik nodded his chin. The slave threw the mercenary out of the tent. Thanks to that, the atmosphere was much more polite. The mercenaries holding the sub-captain position swallowed their saliva. You can talk bullshit as much as you want, but the one who has to take responsibility for that bullshit is me. Why? Because this mercenary band is my mercenary band. The Duke will also hold me responsible, and the Count will also hold me responsible. How nice it would be if it could be solved by hanging on the gallows, but is it going to end like that? I'm sorry. In the future, when you talk, know who your opponent is at least before you talk bullshit. Do you understand? I understand. Although he looked like a rough and fat mercenary, Gulik was a mercenary who had rolled around on the battlefield. It was impossible for a mercenary to receive a knight title with ordinary experience. As soon as Gulik arrived in Bayern, he gathered rumors. Of course, he knew who Johann was. It was understandable that the Duke would give him the position of a standard-bearer and favor him, as he had such good results in the tournament and hunting. In any case, it was a fool to provoke someone who was receiving the Duke's favor. Although the opponent's actions were annoying, there were many nobles who acted more annoying than that. He could tolerate it. Are the materials still okay? Yes. Then just move on. Tell those mercenary bastards to get their asses in gear and start drinking. It's time for the newbies to get a taste of reality. I understand. A few sub-captains smiled slyly. When they were lured to work as mercenaries, they only told good stories, but it was actually difficult to do mercenary work with a clear mind. For the first few days, they were well appeased by feeding them alcohol and meat, but once they were far enough away that it would be difficult to escape, they could show their true colors. Select one person per 10 teams and whip them. Discipline them. Yes. They were a typical Empire-style mercenary band, unlike Johann's group. Chapter 93.2. There are a few guys up ahead. Is it a surprise attack? No. The people from the town came to pay tribute. At Aklada's words, Johann had a grim expression. Did the mercenaries attack? No sign of them. Sir Knight. I don't trust the Empire, but I don't think they'll attack. Good. I worried for nothing. Is that it? Ha ha. I didn't say that to hear that. But I'm in a good mood anyway. Johann scoffed as he received the money from the village chief. Rumors had spread, and the village was sending people over to him first. They probably planned to appease him first in case the army came close and caused unnecessary damage. Dash! After sending the town village chief away, Johann checked the map. The map was rudimentary for Johann's standards, but he knew they could reach Undim in a day or two. Count Ganelwood's vanguard had left first, followed by the mercenaries. Didn't see the vanguard nearby? Yes. Could it be were the first to arrive? It's possible. Marco, who had been on several campaigns, agreed. Johann's march was notably fast. Usually, they would slow down due to looting and resupplying. Who? Didn't expect this, but we arrived first. Might receive some praise. The first to arrive, the first to scale the walls, the first to breach the gates, all were rewarded. Johann wasn't particularly eager, but it wasn't bad to receive. Let's stop here for today. Let's prepare for camp. Are you going out again? It's fine if you come with me, but do you want to? No. To be honest, I was really bored. Johann laughed at Aklada's honest answer. I'll just take Sir Gerdolf with me. Please prepare for camp. It was only natural that Aklada was bored. Johann was drawing a new map every time they stopped. For centaurs, who mostly record things orally, paper and ink were unfamiliar objects. Gerdolf. Are you bored? Yes. I'm sorry I brought you along. Gerdolf was loyal, but he was also honest. Boredom is boredom. Damn it, those son of a bitches. I will issue a warning. It's no use, it's counterproductive. Count Ganelwood said while sweating. The town they had just passed through was completely destroyed. Count also understood the need for supplies and self-sufficiency. But it was clear that the mercenary bastards were being greedy. Once they had taken the supplies, they should have restrained themselves, but they had taken everything down to the roots. Even though they were blinded by money, it was a bit too much. But he couldn't warn them either. This was one of the customary rights of mercenaries. If he prohibited it, there would be discontent. If he had to choose between serfs and soldiers, he had to take care of the soldiers. Tell them that those who arrive late will be severely punished. I think that will get their attention. Have you found the enemy? No, but they may be surrendering or holding out in the city. The Count thought it was quite likely that Undim city would surrender before fighting, begging for mercy. The nearby cities and small kingdoms all lacked the ability to intervene. In such a situation, it was not strange to surrender to such a large army. That may be the case. But we need to be careful. I will remember that. Just leave it to me. Sir. We've been ambushed. The Barber mercenary group in the east has been ambushed. Sir Karpati was surprised. He didn't think the Barber mercenary groups were so sloppy that they could be ambushed, but there were always those who made mistakes or were careless. What is the scale? About 100 barbarian raiders, a mix of cavalry and centaurs, had attacked the merchant caravan. They focused on the merchants and supplies rather than the mercenaries. Count Ganelwood, who was listening, forgot about the situation and was amazed. How could they use those barbarian raiders so effectively? If they fought properly, they would be crushed, but they were enough to slow down the army. The speed was slowed down not only because of the supplies but also because of the fear of being attacked. They managed to hire those barbarian raiders. And no, they probably didn't hire them. It must be the work of the small kingdom. They could do it. Tell them to close the gaps between the troops and slow down the speed. Tell them to double the number of scouts. The Count responded immediately. It was better to arrive a little late than to be played with. Fortunately, the Count had a reputation that would not be tarnished even if rumors spread that he was afraid. I understand. And, Sir Karpati. I would like you to protect our Repiata Gong. Sir Karpati nodded. Repiata Gong was also leading the army, but he was honestly worried. He would feel much more at ease if he protected him personally. The Duke said I could do whatever I wanted, but I can't do that. I'll be responsible for it later. Even if the Duke was serious, a vassal could not do that. As Sir Karpati was leaving, he said, "Oh, we should also warn the vanguard." "Yes, I will do that." Upon arriving at Undim, Johann was certain he was the first to reach. People who saw the army were screaming and running into the city. Aklada asked with an expression that suggested itching for action. "Shall we pursue? What's the use in catching them? We'd barely make anything. Let's focus on what needs to be done." After setting up a camp outside the city's shooting range, they controlled those trying to enter and exit the city. It was a basic siege tactic. Siege warfare wasn't just about storming the walls. Most sieges were, in fact, quite tedious. Regardless of the wall's height, attempting to breach it with this force was madness, especially without siege engines. Johann decided to do only what he could. However, Johann's arrival caused a greater stir than expected. Unaware of the happenings within the city walls, Johann didn't know that the people of Undim were imagining the worst. "Defense Captain. What in the world is happening? Calm down. It's just the vanguard that has arrived. They're not that many." "Not many? They fill the horizon. And didn't you hear what those who fled here said? There are barbarians from the east too. Inside Umdim, they barely scraped together 1,000 soldiers. Even after hastily hiring more mercenaries, that was all they had. The mercenaries, sensing the tide, were reluctant to join a losing battle. The only reliable figure was a defense captain from a distant small kingdom. He was of lower nobility and had connections to request reinforcements. Ah. You must have seen the cavalry wrong. Barbarians are not so easy to deal with. Unless the Duke himself is here, they're heavy bodies. Oh shit. The defense captain looked down from the wall in horror. Centaurs were visible. Clearly, the eastern barbarian tribes had arrived. While the small kingdoms that had previously mingled with the tribes had somewhat assimilated with the barbarians, the empire had not. Even if the Duke had pursued a policy of appeasement, participating in the war was unexpected. Chapter 94.1. Barbarian fools, have you no pride? Blinded by the Duke's gold coins. The defense captain insulted the tribes. Though it was ironic coming from him, who hailed from a small kingdom that acted arrogantly among the nobles of the larger kingdom. See, can we trust this guy? Sure. Be careful with your words. Doubting our own in front of the enemy. When complaints arose, others rebuked him. The defense captain was originally from the Slovak kingdom, located on the east of the Aegean Sea, on the Ulcana Peninsula. In this situation, the only force that agreed to support Umdim city was from this place. The people of the empire mocked them for calling themselves a kingdom, but a kingdom was still a kingdom. Ha! I must speak my mind. What did I say? Surrendering as soon as possible is the only way to appease the Duke's anger and save us all. Quiet! That's just your way of saving yourself. Saving myself? Then what's your plan? If greed got us into this mess, we should at least think of taking responsibility. The people quickly became divided. Especially in a city where various families had control, these situations became more vulnerable. Some supported the Duke, others the small kingdoms, and others various city-states, clashing with each other. Whoever lost ground here was as good as dead. They grabbed each other by the collar, growling. Calm down. It's just the vanguard. They are not even approaching here. If we hold out relying on the walls, they will soon retreat. Nonsense. If we are to surrender, it must be before the attack begins. Once it starts, it's too late. Siege warfare had its own customs. If a city wanted to surrender, it had to do so before the attack began. If it surrendered after the attack had begun, it was unlikely to receive mercy. Even if the commander wanted to show mercy, the soldiers below him would go crazy. Surrender meant that a few people might be executed, but most people would be spared. It was only natural to be tempted by that. Send out the soldiers and drive the members of the council away. Yes, sir. The commotion soon died down. The Umdim city was controlled by nobles who opposed the Duke, and the captain of the guard was also one of them. The people retreated in fear as the soldiers threatened them. The captain of the guard let out a sigh of relief. Captain, are you sure that reinforcements are coming? Those barbarian bastards should be on our side. Those tribesmen are not the only ones on the plains. They are as numerous as acorns that have fallen from a tree. A few greedy and stupid ones have come, so don't worry too much. I understand. By the way, make sure the gate is well guarded. We don't know who might betray us. Yes, sir. It was frustrating to have to worry about internal betrayal on top of having such a small number of soldiers, but there was nothing he could do. The second army to arrive was the Willigo mercenary group. They saw Johann's army, which had arrived first and was neatly set up, and flinched. Sir Johann. Hello? I was amazed that you arrived first. You are indeed a knight of the Duke. Sir Gulick. I see the ability of the mercenary company by coming here earlier than others. Gulick smiled at Johann's praise. They knew it was mutual flattery, but they didn't feel bad. By the way, I punished the man who was rude to you severely. Oh. Well, you don't have to do that. Thank you. Gulick was a little surprised. He thought Johann would be happy or satisfied. What's with this young knight? Why is he so calm? He should be happy, even for his own petty pride. Do you have anything to ask or discuss? I think we should wait until the advance party and main force arrive. Ah. Have you not heard the news? They will be a little late. Gierlich was able to hear the news by chance because he arrived a step late. Tribal warriors were roaming around in groups of tens, stirring up the camp. That's too bad. It will take some time. That's right, isn't it? I heard that a few of the guys in the nearby town told the location of the marching army. Who? Is that so? The priests say that we should show mercy, but it seems that the world is a place where those who show mercy lose. There is no one to trust, so it would be easier to wipe them all out. Gierlich gently mocked Johann within a harmless limit. He thought that this would make him feel a little better. Were you attacked on the way? No. If I had been attacked, I would have come later. That's right. I would have been attacked if I had plundered the town. What do you mean by that? Think about it carefully. It's strange that a few men would report the location of an army of over 1,000 people. They must have reported it because they had nothing to lose. What would they hide when the town was in ruins? Only hatred would remain. Since neither you nor I have been attacked, I guess at least the towns we passed did not report it. Isn't mercy quite useful? Isn't it because they were afraid that they didn't report it? That can also be another side of mercy. God does not always appear in one form. Sir Gierlich. That's enough, thanks. If you don't have anything else to say, you should go and prepare for your camp. Gierlich honestly felt like he had been punched by this young knight. It wasn't a punch that made him feel disgusted, but a punch that made sense. He was completely refuted. He thought he was an immature knight dastard who had no experience leading an army and only had individual strength. He was much more of a stumbling block than he thought. Gierlich bowed and withdrew. Without Gierlich knowing it, his attitude when he withdrew was much more respectful. Chapter 94.2. I want to control the river. Is there any way to get a boat? Most cities are located near or next to a river. Even if the city gates are blocked, if the river is left alone, the effect will be halved. However, the tribal warriors from the east hated the sound of rivers and boats. For them who had lived in the grasslands for their entire lives, a river of a certain width or more was a source of fear. I'd rather go over the city walls. I'd rather try to break through the city gates than go on water. That's right. Even warriors who don't bat an eye at arrows and stones are often weak to superstition. It wasn't surprising that the tribal warriors were afraid of water and superstition. However, it seemed that the tribal warriors interpreted Johann's understanding in a different way. Are you disappointed in us? Like a arsehole who can't even cross water. Our tribe's shaman said that if you cross the river, a water ghost will stick to your back. That's a rumor, you idiot. Water ghosts just grab your ankles and drown you, they don't stick to you. Damn, really? While the tribal warriors were uneasy with each other, Johann came up with a different plan. Since he couldn't find a large boat, he gathered as many small fishing boats as possible from the nearby village. Gather a few small fishing boats from the nearby village, then capture a larger merchant ship that travels the river, and use that ship to block the narrow passage of the river. No. That's too bold, no matter how you look at it. Suetig and Sinerna also looked worried about whether to stop this or let it go. First of all, it was a dangerous task to climb onto a large ship from a low fishing boat, and then there was also a problem. If you're not careful, you'll be surrounded on the ship. Even if it's a merchant ship, there will be a fair amount of guards, and the sailors who do tough work are as strong as soldiers. If you fall into the river with injuries, shouldn't we stop it? Sinerna looked at Suetlig as if he was crazy. However, Suetlig couldn't stop it. It looks doable. The people on the merchant ship would also not be prepared in the same way, and if Johann went wild, there was a high probability that they would be scared and surrender. The tribal warriors gritted their teeth and volunteered. Take us with you, Sir Knight. I volunteer. You said you can't swim? As long as I don't fall in, that's all. No. You should at least be able to do some breaststroke. You guys will be used later, so don't worry. The tribal warriors were crestfallen. Johann comforted them and then gave the order again. Since it's not a military ship but a merchant ship, it doesn't matter if the number is small. If we capture the ship, I will divide all the goods inside as a reward. In response to the crazy reward, the mercenaries' eyes flashed and they rushed forward. The mercenaries who had followed Johann since the fortress siege did not hesitate to come forward. A merchant ship sailing leisurely on the river was unexpectedly captured. At first, when people saw several small boats approaching quickly, they thought. But Johann threw a spear with a rope and stuck it into the side of the ship, then climbed up instantly by cutting the side with a dagger and an axe. The people who were carelessly on guard were so surprised that they couldn't even shoot an arrow. Johann threw a rope down and grabbed the sailors who were attacking him, and the people shouted for surrender in fear. The other ship that was coming from behind is running away. It's fine. They were just trying to block our way. It's enough to block this path, Johann said as he got off the ship. The tribal warriors cheered for Johann as loudly as possible, perhaps because they were stabbed a lot. The soldiers and warriors who were accustomed to Johann's crazy bravery showed a relatively calm reaction. The Willigo mercenary group, who had set up a camp behind them, was so shocked that they couldn't speak. Did the night dastard fly up the ship with wings? Yes, that's right. What kind of crazy bullshit is that? No, it's not. Don't talk like an asshole. I thought so. There's no way a person could have wings. So the knight prayed on the ship, and suddenly God lifted Sir Knight up and... Holy shit, there's a miracle like that? Where's the priest? Call the priest. Does that make sense? Gee, God is so great that such a thing is possible, but... Hey, the priest said it's true. No, I mean it's possible, but it's not that. Can't I just pray? As the ridiculous rumor spread, Gulick let out a sigh of laughter. What kind of rumor is that? It seems that newly arrived hillbillies are especially affected. Tell the priest to hold a prayer meeting, and pick one person out of every 10 to whip. It was funny that the mercenaries, who would burn down villages and loot them without a second thought, were superstitious and often turned to God, but what could he do? To rule the mercenaries, he couldn't just whip them. He had to understand things like that too. But he really didn't fly up, did he? They say he just climbed up with his strength. What the hell? Gulick muttered. Knights who had been trained since childhood could show all sorts of superhuman strength. Gulick had seen it on the battlefield, so he knew it well. Still, he had never seen anything like it. What kind of guy is that knight, anyway? As the soldiers on guard spotted a boat coming through the river in the darkness, they called Johann. Johann nodded as if he was pleased. Trying to escape in the darkness, I see. It seems that whoever it is still not fully awake. 2 ships would be better. Wake up the sailors. However, Johann's expectations were off. The ship was coming with a white flag on its bow. Sir, we are people of the Kartana Merchant Guild. The merchants immediately prostrated themselves as soon as they got off. If it had been before, they wouldn't have had to do this much. Johann was a wandering knight with no reputation, and they were members of a giant merchant guild. However, things were different now. Johann's reputation had reached their ears in such a short time. Get up. How much gratitude have I received from the Kartana Merchant Guild? Johann personally helped the merchants to their feet. The merchants were surprised at his attitude. They never imagined that he would personally help them to their feet. Despite the position he held now, Johann was humble and kind. The merchants were trembling with emotion as they spoke. Why have you come here? Have you escaped from the city? No. We came to deliver a proposal from inside. A proposal? A proposal to open the gates. The merchant took out a petition signed by the city council members from his bosom and handed it to Johann. He tried to read it to him. I can read. I am sorry. Chapter 95.1. While the merchants were feeling embarrassed, Johann read aloud. It was a message about a few members of the city council colluding once the army entered. Not a surrender? Neither the current captain of the defense nor those in command are thinking of surrendering. Well, that makes sense. It was unlikely that those who proposed rebellion against the Duke and now leading the city would easily surrender. Their heads would surely hang from the gallows. However, other council members had different thoughts. Why should they die alongside them? With the vanguard already here, it was only a matter of time. Once the siege began, surrendering would become even more difficult. Therefore, they secretly asked the merchants of the Kartana Merchant Guild to deliver a letter to Johann. Johann thought so, but it was an impossible notion. The council members, treated as nobility within the city, weren't actually nobility. They couldn't raise an army for rebellion. It was madness to think of attacking with the city's vagrants, laborers, and servants. Understood. Give the merchant some wine. I need to gather people and talk. Oh, wait. The merchants, who were looking forward to the wine, looked at Johann curiously. You'll stay in the camp until the siege is over, right? Yes. It seems better that way. Good. I have a favor to ask. Johann led the merchants to a tent. It was where the scribe, in charge of finances for the expedition, and the priests were. Help them with the calculations. Us? Can't you count? No, it's not that. In a noble-led army, financial duties were usually handled by low-ranking nobles or priests skilled in arithmetic. Low-ranking nobles typically learned useful skills like law or theology if they didn't become knights, so taking on such financial roles wasn't unusual. Priests, trained in various knowledge at monasteries, were a natural fit. Merchants were adept at numbers too. However, nobles rarely employed them due to trust issues. I'm sick of calculating with ancient empire numbers. Merchants use Eastern numbers, right? Yes. The merchants of the peninsula used Arabic numerals, referred to here as Eastern numerals, influenced by trade. Take charge of the calculations. The scribes may take a rest. Thank you. Those who had been forced to handle finances due to some education or because they were from the priesthood side in relief. They didn't want to do it either. Moreover, if the counterpart was illiterate, it would have been more comfortable, but Johann, as if possessed, kept finding errors in the calculations. Originally, such financial calculations couldn't be exactly precise. It wasn't because they were embezzling. There were errors in manually doing it every day, and with the additional complexity of ancient empire numerals, discrepancies were inevitable. So, they would usually conclude with an approximate level of accuracy. But the counterpart was Johann. Johann couldn't accept such roughly done calculations. Can we really do the calculations? It doesn't matter. Thank you. The reason merchants weren't used in such roles was due to distrust, but Johann didn't care about that. After all, he could catch most things with just one glance at the ledger, especially when written in Eastern numerals. Great! Isn't Sir Knight currently blessed with good fortune? We must be. The forces are formidable. The opinions of the people gathered in the meeting room were divided. Aklada, Stephen, and Sinerna thought it was a good opportunity, while Suitg, Euclia, and Marco thought they should be careful. Sinerna asked, seemingly not understanding. You said it was okay to capture the ship, didn't you? That was something we could try. We actually succeeded, didn't we? What can you say if you succeeded? The one who didn't guess is an asshole. Capturing the ship didn't seem like it would fail, and even if it did, it didn't seem that dangerous. The opponent was a merchant ship, and there were many soldiers here. But this is a completely different matter. Even if the opponent doesn't betray us, a single mistake could be dangerous. It's different from Sangdaju Castle. Sangdaju Castle was a small fortress, and this was a city, even if it was an ancient one. I think we can get away even if something happens. Suitg whispered to Johann so that only he could hear. Think carefully. The tribal warriors you brought with you are all well respected in the tribe. If they get hurt or captured, you'll be in trouble. Those who were summoned by the Duke and received a knighthood were quite good tribal natives. If such people were to die in large numbers, Johann's relationship with them could be in danger. Chapter 95.2. What? The Willigo mercenary group was stunned by Johann's sudden proposal. Sir Knight, you are being too generous? The mercenary who was about to say bastard quickly changed his words. Johann's proposal was that unexpected. So you're going to attack the castle because you received a proposal for internal cooperation, and you're going to include us in it? No matter how you looked at it, it was too generous. The Willigo mercenary group had no connection with Johann, and there was no reason for him to share this with them. Is it a trap? A Duke's Knight and a mercenary group working together with the other city to set a trap? Why would they do that? Why yeah, I guess you're right. I'm sorry. The sub-captain, who felt that Guerlic's words made no sense, also kept his mouth shut. He had suspected that the knight would push the mercenaries into a dangerous position first, like a knight would do, but that was not the case. Johann had already declared that he would lead from the front. It was a proposal that had no downsides. Of course, sneaking into the city while deceiving the enemy's eyes was a dangerous act in itself, but where was there anything safe in the mercenary business? The most important thing was not the danger of the task, but the reward. Stephen yawned. The mercenaries had kept him waiting too long. What are you doing? If you don't want to accept the proposal, just say so. I'm sorry. Please wait a little longer. Stephen, who came as a messenger, looked like a nobleman from head to toe. The disappointed mercenaries were so intimidated that they groveled. In the end, Gulick made a decision. He would choose the mercenaries who were agile and good at fighting to help out. The offer was too good to refuse, even if he didn't understand it. Gong, there are rumors that reinforcements are coming from the kingdom. Soldiers who were marching with the main force were spreading rumors. Reinforcements are coming from the Slovak kingdom. As rumors spread, from the ones who would sneak in and then disappear in groups of dozens to the ominous rumors, the soldiers' vigilance increased even more. Brynhild shook her head at Repiata's words. After gathering his strength for a long time to speak, Repiata opened his mouth. If they were coming, they would have come sooner. The fact that they are sending so few means that they don't have the ability to send reinforcements. Does that mean they are abandoning the city? Repiata nodded. The kingdom had little ability to help Undim. So they would be sending small units of soldiers like misers to just poke around. Then I will issue an order to spread the rumors. It was better not to make the soldiers anxious. Repiata nodded again. He had already said all he had to say for the day. Brynhild, who was faithfully serving as a subordinate and giving orders, was surprised to hear that Johann had already arrived in front of the city. Really? With that much force? Count Ganelwood was also surprised in a similar way. Were they not attacked? First of all, the Sir himself is bringing tribal warriors, and the villages along the advance route did not snitch. They didn't plunder? That's amazing. Count Ganelwood was amazed in a different way. It would not be strange if a young knight, hot-blooded, advanced while destroying towns because of his blood. He advanced quickly by skillfully capturing the towns. Unlike the image of being brave and daring, Johann had a strangely similar smell to the Count. It was something unique that only people of the same class could recognize. Count Ganelwood wondered if he was making a useless mistake. It looked like he was far from him no matter how you looked at it. Count. But the reinforcements of the Slovak bastards. Don't worry. They won't come. Count Ganelwood also had similar thoughts to Repiata. If they were the bastards who would send reinforcements, they wouldn't have been messing around like this in the first place. And even if they faced each other in front of the city, it didn't matter. He had already confirmed that the city's forces were not many. But I already confirmed it by sending a spy to Slovak. There is no reinforcement. The knight was surprised. Even though the Count could not withstand a single blow if he fought with a weapon, he felt scared at this moment. Increase the marching speed. Yes. Even though he gave such an order, it took 3 more days to arrive. The vanguard, which was in front, first confirmed the surroundings. It was to confirm Johann or other mercenaries. However, there was no other visible encampment. What is it? After confirming for a long time, the vanguard realized that something was strange about the flag that was raised on the city wall. It was not the flag of the city, but the flag of the Duke's family. The bastards of the city surrendered. Go and report it quickly. The vanguard was shocked and turned around. They thought the city could surrender, but they never thought it would surrender so quickly. Considering it was the occupation of a city, the mood among the occupying forces was not very good. More precisely, it was not good only where the commanders were gathered. While the soldiers were inflated with expectations of immense rewards. A few sub-captains of the Willigo mercenary group and their leader Gulick looked at Sinerna with eyes filled with fear and disgust. If it wasn't for Johann, they would have left the place immediately. Sinerna had a headache. Not because of their attitude, but due to the after-effects of magic. She spoke, massaging her face. Didn't I say it was a mistake? That mistake, if it had happened a few more times, would have burned us all to death, wouldn't it? So what do you want me to do? Are you saying I should have refrained from using fire there? The mercenaries were understandably terrified. Sinerna almost burned them all. The plan was simple. Enter the city via the river, set fires in various places to create chaos, and use the opportunity to secure the magistrate and the defense captain, forcing the soldiers to surrender. During this, Johann displayed fierce combat skills. He alone entered a place guarded by more than a dozen soldiers and slaughtered them, which even made the Willigo mercenary group gulp. They might have disparaged the knight in his absence, but after witnessing this, their hearts raced and their legs trembled. The problem was Sinerna. Sinerna agreed readily, and joined them under the condition that Johann would protect her. But there were far more places to set fire to than expected. It was a big deal to procure firewood and kindling in such a place. The impatient mercenaries urged Sinurna. As a result, Sinurna's flames went out of control, ravaging the surroundings. If the direction had been slightly off, the mercenaries would have been reduced to ashes. The mercenaries were about to shoot Sinurna, but Johann stopped them because of his oath. Eventually, Johann dashed through the flames, knocked out the frenzied Sinurna, and carried her out. She was somewhat protected by Gulrak's surcoat, otherwise, she would have been engulfed in flames. Anyway, wasn't it a success? You all urged her to. Seeing that Johann was unlikely to punish Sinurna, Gulick immediately gave up. After all, it's fine as long as they didn't die. True. Thanks to Sir Knight. I sincerely appreciate it. How to live as a wandering knight. Chapter 96.1. Chapter 96.1. There were no mercenaries who clung to that place after nearly losing their lives. After all, isn't the very job of a mercenary about risking one's life? Above all, having seen Johann slaughter the city soldiers, they were not foolish enough to continue challenging him. Currently, he was treating the mercenaries kindly and respectfully, but who knew if he would take up a sword in anger? If Johann wanted to save that insane wizard, he could. The mercenaries had no complaints. They had melted away at the sight of Johann. Johann slightly regretted it. He should have calmed down the excited mercenaries. It was the first time he realized how terrifying uncontrolled magic could be. Especially the power of Sinurna, who wielded fire, was even more brutal. Make sure the mercenaries who have entered do not act recklessly. Yes. Since I've threatened them with whippings and the gallows, none will dare to act rashly. But Sir Knight, we still haven't found the defense captain. After invading the city and causing chaos, they succeeded in capturing the magistrate and some members of the Royal Faction Advisory Council. However, the defense captain managed to escape swiftly. They had no choice but to focus on the magistrate first. The mercenaries were still searching, but there was no news yet. It doesn't matter. After all, the defense captain is just another mercenary like us. Gulick wasn't too worried about missing the defense captain. They might have missed him, but they had captured all the sub-captains. What more could they do with all the actual commanders in custody? By now, the defense captain would be far south, fleeing with his amassed wealth. There's no need to be unnecessarily scared, but stay vigilant. Deploy soldiers in each area and set up guards. Johann spoke firmly. It wasn't just them, the Willigo mercenary group had also entered, so the tasks had to be divided. The problem was, while Johann trusted his own men, he couldn't trust those from the Willigo mercenary group. There were many experienced veterans, but also many green recruits without proper gear. The most frightening thing was a mistake by one's own allies. That's why he had to speak strongly. When Johann spoke strongly, it meant his voice was filled with murderous intent and intimidation. The sub-captains felt their mouths dry with tension. Wiping sweat from their hands, they nodded. Sir Knight. I have brought this for you, Sir Knight. Normally, one should take care of such things themselves. Aclada, with a cheerful face, tried to put a golden necklace around Johann's neck. Although they did not plunder the city, the properties of the Kingdom Party, City Party members, and magistrates had already been confiscated. The confiscated properties were amicably shared among those who arrived first. There was a reason why the mercenaries were so delighted. Thanks for the necklace. So, did you properly take care of what I asked? I did, but I'm not sure if I saw it correctly. Johann had ordered Aclada to separately collect anything like documents or maps that the magistrate had, that is, anything written in black ink on white paper. Such items could be lost or burned in the chaos. Satisfied with the collected amount, Johann expressed his gratitude. Thank you. You've worked hard. Don't you like this more than the golden necklace? Aclada looked disappointed. It was the most splendid and beautiful item from the magistrate's mansion. He had fought off others who were drooling over it and brought it. No. I'm certainly grateful for this too. Very happy. Sir Knight is indeed a unique person. Regardless of what Aclada said, Johann separately took care of the maps and estate registers related to the towns of Dolek and Palmon that he had agreed to receive. He had suspected their existence, and there they were. The registers contained details of properties, incomes, residences, and names of freemen, serfs, and slaves, as well as land records. Such registers were usually compiled by the town priests. Johann knew this well as he had learned while working with the priests. The records were detailed, possibly written by a meticulous priest. "Sir Knight, the main force has arrived." "That's good. Now I can relax a bit." It had been tense controlling the city with only Johann's army and the Willigo mercenary group. While the mercenaries were happily spirited, Johann was someone who prepared for the worst in such situations. It's often those who worry a lot who end up suffering. Unlike Johann, the mercenaries were quite disappointed to hear that the main force had arrived. Chapter 96.2. What, not a surrender but a surprise attack to take over the city? Wow, you deserve the title of a siege expert, wouldn't you? You flatter me too much. No, I'm really impressed. Independent Illinois definitely report this victory to His Grace, the Duke. Count Ganelwood's face was filled with satisfaction. Unknown to others, but Sir Carpati could tell. Count Ganelwood was not a bad person, but neither was he kind. He belonged to the category of being particular and quirky. It was surprising to see the Count look at someone with such an affectionate gaze. It made sense though. Had Sir Carpati been younger, he would have openly shown his joy. Although the city had few soldiers, a city was still a city. Holding up against its walls could give the attackers a headache. But to have ended it so swiftly. How is the city now? There are a few scared people, but overall it's peaceful. The magistrate and council members and sub-captains have been captured and imprisoned. What about looting? Except for the residences of the magistrate and council members, we didn't touch anything else. Count Ganelwood was more surprised by this than the city's capture. It was astonishing that Johann had restrained himself, but even more so that he had controlled the other mercenaries and warriors. The mercenaries were greedy madmen for gold, and the tribal warriors believed in. Whatever he did, it was chillingly impressive control. Count Ganelwood felt cold sweat running down his back. Bravery was one thing, but how could someone of his age control his subordinates so strongly? Is there a problem? Not at all. As Johann asked with a puzzled look, Count Ganelwood regained his senses and nodded. Now was not the time to be amazed. He had to get back to work as soon as possible. If you looted the magistrate's residence, a lot of documents must have been lost. Oh, that's unfortunate. I had the document separately secured. It seemed important, so I gave the order. What in the world, why did you only appear now? Count Ganelwood looked at Johann with a moved expression. If there had been knights like Johann, or even just one, how much easier would it have been for him? Thinking of the many battles he had fought and the aftermath he had to deal with, his voice couldn't help but tremble. Johann and his soldiers were given a rest. Even when the main force arrived, it was impossible to bring all the soldiers into the city. If they did, the city would be in chaos. It was only natural that those who showed bravery as the vanguard were given special privileges. Even after the city was occupied and the aftermath settled, there were still annoying matters to deal with. Things like showing an example to the towns in the south that remained defiant, even after the change of leadership. Such tasks did not necessarily require Johann's intervention. Johann wanted to see the town promised by the Duke himself. After all, he had to return after appointing a manager there. Good. Let's take a walk. Are you looking for something? Quick on the uptake, aren't you? Yes. Undim may not be a big city, but its location is not bad. There could be interesting things to find. The city itself was not very large, but the river connected to the Adene Sea, facilitating various trades. It was natural for Suitg, who was mostly in the Empire, to look for unique items. By the way, did Sinerna run amok? Yes, she shot flames everywhere. You managed not to kill her. We had an agreement beforehand. Not many can keep their promises. You did well. I was worried you might be taking magic too lightly. Stung by Suitlug's words, Johann felt a twinge of guilt. Suitg spoke sternly. In magic, arrogance must never be entertained. As seen with Sinerna, even the most skilled and experienced wizard can be consumed by magic. He'll keep that in mind. Yes. When Suitg and Johann stopped, the staff of the trading company hurried out. They had eyes and ears, they couldn't be unaware of those who had taken over the city. Is this lapis lazuli? I would prefer if there were other malachite. We have a rare item imported from the east. Bring it. I'll pay a fair price. In a situation where they couldn't complain even if robbed, they were grateful for such words. The staff carefully brought out the items. Johann, not particularly interested in gems, wandered around, rummaging through various things. The staff watched him with worried expressions. They couldn't stop a knight from rummaging, nor could they just leave him be, feeling uneasy. Looking for something? I need to meet Repiata Gong for dinner and am looking for a gift. Ah, it's indeed better to prepare that in advance. How about a sword? There seem to be some items from the East, and Eastern swords are not bad. Sometimes, swords made by experts in the East were sharper and cooler than those made by Empire's experts. Though publicly denounced as heretics and evil, there were no nobles who disliked treasures brought from the East. I'm not sure if he can handle a sword. He'll learn if necessary. It's the thought that counts. This one is good. It sounds like there's water inside. You're not just saying that because you're distracted by the gems, right? Suitlig did not answer, seemingly lost in thought. Johann clicked his tongue and turned his gaze elsewhere. Repiata's invitation was understandable. It was only natural that he should be congratulated for successfully completing such an expedition. Moreover, rumors had it that this time the city of Umdim would be given to a child of Brudu. Among Brudu's children, only Repiata had joined the army. Hence, it seemed likely that Repiata would receive governance over the city. Gaining a city without much effort, it would never be too much to call upon him several times. Still, as a knight, one couldn't just go casually. No one would criticize for going empty-handed, but it was better to adhere to customs. Ah. Now that I think about it, I heard that Repiata Gong is fond of books. Is that so? Johann was delighted. When offering a gift, it was always best to give something the recipient liked. He said to the merchant, "If you have any useful books, bring them to me. Just a moment, please. I'll call someone who can read the ancient imperial language. I can read it, no need to worry. The Duke has employed a demon. How many times must I say it's not a demon? It was a human. If that's not a demon, I'd rather gouge out my eyes, damn it." The defense captain sighed. Never had he thought the fierce and rough mercenaries would be so terrified. Honestly, he couldn't say he didn't understand their feelings. The enemies that sprung from the darkness were indeed terrifying. No, while others had ambushed, they were merely ordinary mercenaries. Only the knight leading the mercenaries was exceptionally fierce. With one hand, the knight grabbed the spear shaft, snapped it, then grabbed the neck and threw it aside. He handled the well-dressed soldier as if tossing a child. The terrified soldiers ran back, trying to close and bolt the thick door, but the knight smashed it open with his axe and entered. With fires blazing all around and the cries growing louder, the situation was chaotic. As the demonic-looking knight approached, the soldiers, petrified with fear, went mad. They abandoned their oaths, dropped their weapons, and fled.